Silent Vesuvius. Mount Vesuvius looms above the Bay of Naples on Italy's west coast. Vesuvius is one of several Italian volcanoes that formed where two tectonic plates are very slowly colliding. As one plate creeps beneath the other, magma rises up through cracks in Earth's crust. Over time, erupting magma has created Vesuvius and its volcanic neighbors. Many volcanologists, or volcano scientists, consider Vesuvius one of the world's most dangerous volcanoes. Why? Vesuvius has been one of Europe's most active volcanoes. It is within a few miles of several large Italian cities. A major eruption could threaten the lives of at least 3 million people. Scientists monitor Vesuvius closely. They have placed dozens of sensors on the sides of the mountain. If you hiked to the crater on Vesuvius's top, you would see some of these sensors along the trail. The sensors record the mountain's slightest movement. Any unusual shaking can be a sign that an eruption is coming. The sensors also record information about the hot gases rising from the volcano's crater. A change in these gases is also a sign of trouble. Scientists analyze sensor data 24 hours a day. They issue a warning if the data suggests an eruption is brewing. When this happens, people living around the Bay of Naples are urged to evacuate. Scientists worry, however, that there might not be enough time for thousands of people to get a safe distance away from the volcano. Vesuvius has a history of erupting very suddenly. Vesuvius's last eruption occurred in 1944. For nearly 2 weeks, the volcano released billowing clouds of ash and gas. Fountains of lava shot up from the volcano's crater. Yet this eruption was minor compared to the eruption in 79 CE. It was the largest, most devastating Vesuvius eruption in recorded history. Millions of tons of hot ash and volcanic rock buried several ancient Roman towns at the volcano's base. As many as 16,000 people died. The 79 CE eruption of Vesuvius happened almost 2,000 years ago. Yet we know a great deal about it because of evidence left behind. Part of the evidence is an eyewitness account. A 17-year-old Roman known as Pliny the Younger lived through the disaster and wrote about it in a letter. Eyewitness to disaster. In the summer of 79 CE, Pliny and his mother were staying with his uncle. They lived in Misenum, a town at the northern edge of the Bay of Naples. Misenum was about 20 miles from Vesuvius. They could see Vesuvius across the bay. On an August afternoon, Pliny's mother noticed a strange cloud forming across the bay. Pliny described it in his letter. The cloud was rising from a mountain that we later learned was Vesuvius. Its shape was a pine tree. It rose into the sky on a trunk that seemed to have branches. What Pliny and his mother saw was the first stage of Vesuvius's eruption. Hot gas from deep inside the volcano had erupted, sending a gigantic column of ash and volcanic rock blasting up into the air. At its top, the cloud was spreading outward. It created a shape like a mushroom or umbrella, or in Pliny's imagination, an Italian pine tree. While his uncle sailed across the bay to investigate, Pliny stayed behind with his mother. Earthquakes shook the ground again and again. Ash and smoke filled the air. By morning, the sky was still dark. The air was so thick with volcanic ash that sunlight was blocked. Ash fell like snow from the sky. Pliny and his mother decided to head for the hills above Misenum. They were joined by a crowd of panicked, terrified people from the town. From the hillside above the town, Pliny looked back across the bay toward Vesuvius. The towering pine tree-shaped cloud above the volcano was still there, but had turned black. Lightning and sheets of orange flame flickered inside it. Then, as Pliny watched, the gigantic cloud seemed to collapse. It fell from the sky and swept down the side of the volcano. Part of it surged over the water of the bay and rolled toward them. Pliny grabbed his mother's hand and tugged her farther up the hillside. He wrote, "A dense cloud came up behind us. It spread over the earth." Have you ever been in a room with no windows when the lights went out? That is how Pliny described the darkness. He and his mother crouched down, afraid to move because they couldn't see anything at all. He described the scene. Ashes began to fall again, this time in heavy showers. We shook them off, otherwise we would have been buried beneath them. Time dragged. Pliny was sure he was going to die. Then, gradually, the darkness lifted. The ashfall slowed and eventually stopped. He saw that everything around him was covered in drifts of volcanic ash. He was sure the worst was over. A few days later, Pliny and his mother learned that his uncle was dead. He had died trying to help evacuate people from Pompeii, a nearby city. What about the towns around the bottom of the volcano? Pompeii and other towns at the volcano's base were gone, completely buried under volcanic ash and rock. Buried evidence. Pliny's letter gave scientists important clues about Vesuvius's eruption in 79 CE. The buried towns, and in particular Pompeii, provided even more information. It took hundreds of years, however, to unearth them. In 1748, people looking for Roman artifacts began digging near what had been Pompeii. As shovels cut into the soft volcanic rock, the diggers discovered that volcanic ash had preserved Pompeii. Buildings were still standing. Streets were still littered with objects people had dropped as they tried to escape. Inside homes, loaves of bread and food inside clay jars were still recognizable. The remains of some living things were also eerily recognizable. As the volcanic cloud swept down from Vesuvius, hot volcanic ash covered people and animals in seconds. They were entombed where they had fallen. Excavations continued at Pompeii. Herculaneum, another town buried by Vesuvius in 79 CE, has also been uncovered. Workers have restored many of the houses, temples, and streets in these towns. They have cleaned and repaired paintings, sculptures, and mosaics. If you visit Pompeii and Herculaneum, you can walk down ancient Roman streets that look much like they did the day before the volcanic disaster. You can see where children your age played games, ate their meals, and slept. You can look out ancient windows and see Vesuvius, still active, high above the towns. Details of the disaster. Scientists have pieced together a detailed account of the event. When Vesuvius erupted, it created the enormous cloud that Pliny saw. Hot volcanic material rained down from this cloud onto Pompeii and other nearby towns. Hot ash fell and accumulated into piles on the ground. Yet most people living in the towns at the volcano's base apparently survived the ashfall. Some fled on foot or in boats. Most of the people stayed and returned to their homes. Scientists suspect they thought the worst was over. They were wrong. The towering cloud that hung above Vesuvius collapsed. Pliny witnessed it from his position across the bay. As millions of tons of hot volcanic materials dropped toward Earth, they gained speed, creating what scientists call pyroclastic flows. A pyroclastic flow is a sort of avalanche of intensely hot ash, rock fragments, and volcanic gas. It rolls down the side of a volcano as fast as a speeding train. When Vesuvius's pyroclastic flows hit Pompeii and Herculaneum, there was no time for people to react. In seconds, these volcanic avalanches swallowed up everything in their path. They preserved a moment in time. It was a terrifying moment for the town's inhabitants. For us, it is a unique glimpse into a world long ago. Plinian eruptions. The most powerful volcanic eruptions produce an enormous cloud of ash, bits of rock, and toxic gas. The cloud shoots skyward at hundreds of feet per second. This eruption column, as scientists call it, can soar several dozen miles into the air. At the top of this rising column, the cloud spreads outward. Pliny described the shape very well. Volcanologists call eruptions that produce such clouds Plinian eruptions in his honor. Other Plinian eruptions include Mount St. Helens in the state of Washington in 1980 in Indonesia's Mount Pinatubo in 1991.